Native English speakers can speak very fast. Although most of you can probably understand most, if not everything that I'm saying when I speak clearly like this. If I were to speak fast like this with no pauses and a different rhythm of flow, and I slur and don't enunciate every single word that I say, and it's a little informal, with some slang here or there, then it might be a little bit more difficult for some of you to understand what I just said versus the way that I'm speaking right now. And I'm actually curious if you are able to understand that fast spoken bit. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you were able to understand that with no issue. And not to worry if you couldn't, because today I'm going to show you how to understand fast spoken English a lot better, even if it's spoken super fast. If you're new here, I've helped many people with their English over the years, and I've seen firsthand what works and what doesn't work. To help you out, I recorded a free training lesson showing you the fastest ways to become fluent in English by yourself. If you'd like to check that out, I'll leave a link somewhere in the description or the pinned comment below. Now, I'm sure that you could probably understand English well in school or in language learning apps. But when native English speakers talk, it can be chaos. It's not necessarily about your vocabulary, it's about how English sounds in the real world. Here are the 3 best ways to train your ears to understand real, legitimate, fast spoken English. The first tip is you need to listen to realistic media in English. Now, what do I mean by realistic media? Do not use resources like Netflix or any resource with TV shows or movies that simulate very dramatic sequences and that are heavily scripted. It's cool to use resources like these if you want to entertain yourself, but to educate yourself and to learn what real English sounds like by native English speakers, these resources are not going to be very helpful for you. Alternatively, better resources to use to educate yourself to learn English would be realistic videos on YouTube in a podcast or interview format. Ideally, 2 native English speakers just having a regular conversation and asking each other questions in a podcast setting. Also, YouTube vlogs are very good resources for this too. People walking around town, maybe interviewing people on the street randomly. These simulate real conversations between real native English speakers. And keep in mind, the content doesn't need to be very long, like a podcast or a long vlog. It could even just be short form content on any platform of your choice. You could even listen to YouTube shorts with a native English speaker just telling a quick story in 30 seconds or less. But the key here is to really focus on consuming realistic media, simulating realistic conversations that you will be more likely to encounter in real life. If you watch a dramatic movie like The Avengers, it's cool, it's entertaining, but those superhero movies are heavily scripted, and a lot of the stuff that they talk about are subjects and things that you will probably never talk about in your real life. And this leads to tip number 2, which is to shadow short form content. Now, I know that the shadowing technique is typically used to practice your speaking skills. However, by practicing your speaking skills, it actually indirectly complements your listening skills. By actually shadowing and repeating after what someone is saying on a short form YouTube short video, you're really going to be able to experience what you're listening to as well. By actually speaking and actually experiencing what you're reading, what you're listening to, and now what you're saying, it's going to make it much more natural when you hear it the next time around. By physically living and experiencing something, it's going to be much more meaningful in your head, and you're going to be able to identify it much more naturally in real spontaneous interactions that you come across. And it's not just speaking that complements your listening skills. It's also all of the other 5 other skills in the English language other than listening, being vocabulary, grammar, reading, writing, and of course, speaking. All of those other skills in the English language all come together to help your listening, and they all really complement one another. So it actually is really important that you don't neglect any of the six skills of English and you keep practicing all six in your exercises. And if you would like help figuring out which exercises are the best to exercise all six of your English skills at the same time, just check out our YouTube channel. I've made videos in the past about that, covering that specific topic. But related to tip number two is tip number three, which is pay close attention to how native English speakers use sound linking. Now, similar to how I spoke at the beginning of this video, sometimes native English speakers just put one sentence all together into one word. Some common examples of this would be instead of a native English speaker saying, "How are you doing?" we might just say, "How are you doing?" Instead of a native English speaker saying, "Where are you?" we might just say, "Where are you?" We actually put the entire sentence into one word. Instead of saying, "Thank you very much," we'll just say, "Thank you very much." Now, the examples that I just used are a little bit easier to identify, but unfortunately, this rule also applies to all of the other sentences that we can use, including words that you might be less familiar with. Now, when it comes to practicing listening to sound linking and paying attention to sound linking, there are two critical factors that you need to make sure you're using when you're listening or practicing your listening skills in English. The first factor and the most important factor is that you are listening to English media that is at your current level of English. If you're wondering, how can I tell if a piece of English media is at my current level of English? Simply listen to it. And if you can understand around 80% of everything that's being said, and there's about 20% that you do not understand, you're probably listening to a video or a piece of media that is at your current level of English. If you cannot understand 80% at least of what is being said, then you are probably listening to media that is a little bit too advanced for your current level of English. Now, the most efficient way to practice your listening is by understanding 80% of what's being said and then being able to guess what the other 20% of the words and expressions mean that you are less familiar with, just based on the context and how it was delivered. If you only understand 50% of what you're listening to, and you have to stop the video and research and Google every single word or expression that you don't understand, this is an extremely inefficient way to learn a new language. This is going to be very time consuming and frustrating because I can guarantee you that you're not going to see the results that you want to see anytime soon. I made this mistake myself when I had to learn a new language, and I'm telling you, please be better than me and do not make the same mistake. And the second factor, which is very important, especially if you are not currently at the advanced levels of English, being C1 and C2, you should make use of English subtitles. English subtitles are absolutely key when it comes to understanding sound linking. You're going to be able to associate the English text on the screen with the sound linking that's being used. For example, if you go back to the beginning of this video, if you had subtitles for what I was saying, you'd be able to clearly associate the sound linking I used with what I actually said. So to recap, number one, make sure you're listening to realistic English media that simulates realistic conversations amongst native English speakers. These can be podcasts, YouTube vlogs, and even YouTube shorts of a native English speaker telling a short story. Tip number two, shadow short form content. Again, speaking will indirectly help your listening skills due to your experience of speaking what you listen to. And tip number three, pay attention to sound linking and be sure to consume English media at your current level of English with English subtitles. So trust me, being able to understand fast spoken English is not impossible. It just takes practice. You just need to train your brain to learn how to do it. And out of curiosity, leave a comment down below if I should continue to make videos speaking clearly like this, or if I should start making videos speaking much faster like I normally would as a native English speaker. If you eventually want to get to the C1 or C2 levels of English, you will need to adopt certain habits. To learn what those exact habits are, be sure to watch the next video on the screen.